What if I told you that a spice sitting in your kitchen cabinet right now, one that costs less than $3, has been shown in clinical research to lower fasting blood sugar levels by up to 29%? And what if I told you that for decades, this information has been buried under mountains of pharmaceutical marketing and outdated dietary guidelines? I know that sounds almost too good to be true. I know you've probably heard 100 promises about miracle foods and magic supplements, but stay with me here, because what I'm about to share isn't some internet myth or old wives' tale. This comes directly from peer-reviewed research published in some of the most respected medical journals in the world, including the Journal of Medicinal Food and the Annals of Family Medicine. I'm Dr. Evelyn Moore. I've been practicing internal medicine for over 23 years, and I've spent the last decade of my career focusing specifically on metabolic health in adults over 60. And I have to be honest with you, what I learned about this particular spice 3 years ago completely changed how I approach blood sugar management with my patients. But here's what frustrates me. This isn't new information. Scientists have known about this for years. Yet somehow, when you go to your doctor's appointment and your blood sugar numbers come back elevated, what do you hear? You hear about medications. You hear about cutting carbs. You hear about exercise. All important things, don't get me wrong, but this simple, accessible, affordable intervention, it rarely comes up. And I think that's a problem. I think you deserve to know about every tool available to you, especially one that's been sitting in your spice rack this whole time. Now, I'm going to tell you exactly what this spice is, exactly how much to take, and exactly how it works in your body to regulate blood sugar. But before I do that, I need you to understand something crucial, because if you don't understand why this works, you might use it incorrectly. You might buy the wrong type, you might take it at the wrong time, and you might miss out on the benefits entirely. So let me start by telling you about Margaret. Margaret was 71 years old when she first came to see me. She'd been managing her blood sugar for about 8 years at that point, taking metformin twice a day, watching her diet pretty carefully. But despite doing everything her previous doctor told her to do, her numbers kept creeping up. Her fasting glucose had been hovering around 140 for months. Her A1C was at 7.2, and she was terrified. I remember she sat down in my office that first day, and before I could even finish introducing myself, she said, "Dr. Moore, please don't tell me I need insulin. I watched my mother give herself shots for 15 years. I can't do that. I just can't." I took her hand and I said, "Margaret, let's not jump ahead. Tell me about your routine. Tell me everything." And she did. She told me about her oatmeal breakfast with a little honey because she'd read that honey was better than sugar. She told me about her lunch salads and her grilled chicken dinners. She told me about her walks around the block 3 times a week. She was doing so many things right. But then I asked her a question that changed everything. I asked, "Margaret, what spices do you use when you cook?" She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Spices? I don't know, salt and pepper mostly, sometimes a little garlic powder." Why? What does that have to do with anything? I smiled because I'd had this conversation before. I knew what was coming. I said, "What if I told you there's a spice that could potentially help your body use insulin more effectively? A spice that's been studied extensively and shown to reduce fasting blood sugar in people just like you?" Margaret leaned forward. "I'd say you're pulling my leg, Dr. Moore." I wasn't pulling her leg, and over the next few weeks, what happened with Margaret was nothing short of remarkable. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I tell you the rest of Margaret's story and reveal exactly what that spice was, you need to understand what's actually happening inside your body when your blood sugar stays elevated. Because once you understand this, the solution will make perfect sense. But first, I want to ask you something. If you're watching this video right now and you've been struggling with blood sugar numbers that just won't come down no matter what you do, I want you to leave a comment below. Just type, "That's me," in the comments. I read every single comment on this channel, and I want to know how many of you are in Margaret's shoes right now. How many of you are doing everything right and still fighting this battle every single day? All right, let's talk about what's really going on inside your body. Because here's the thing, when we talk about high blood sugar, most people think it's a simple equation. You eat sugar, your blood sugar goes up. You stop eating sugar, your blood sugar goes down. If only it were that simple. The truth is, blood sugar regulation is one of the most complex processes in the human body, and when you're over 60, that process becomes even more complicated due to something called age-related insulin resistance. Let me explain this in a way that actually makes sense. Think of insulin like a key. Every time you eat, your body produces insulin, and that insulin acts as a key to unlock your cells so glucose can get inside. Your cells need that glucose for energy. It's like fuel for a car. Now, when you're young, those locks work beautifully. The key slides in, the door opens, glucose enters the cell, your blood sugar stays stable. Easy. But as we age, something changes. Those locks start to get rusty. The key doesn't fit quite as well anymore. The door sticks. It takes more and more insulin to get the same door open. This is insulin resistance, and it's incredibly common in adults over 60. Some studies suggest that up to 40% of seniors have some degree of insulin resistance, whether they've been diagnosed with diabetes or not. So here's the problem. Your pancreas, the organ that produces insulin, sees that the glucose isn't getting into your cells efficiently. So what does it do? It produces more insulin. It's like jiggling the key harder and harder, trying to force that rusty lock open. For a while, this works. Your pancreas compensates. Your blood sugar stays relatively normal, but eventually, your pancreas gets exhausted. It can't keep up with the demand. And that's when your fasting blood sugar starts creeping up. That's when your A1C starts climbing. That's when you get that dreaded phone call from your doctor saying your numbers are concerning. Now here's where it gets interesting, and here's where this particular spice enters the picture. You see, there's a second problem happening at the same time, and almost nobody talks about it. When your cells become resistant to insulin, they also start to lose something called glucose transporters. These are proteins that sit on the surface of your cells and help pull glucose inside, even when the insulin key isn't working perfectly. Think of these glucose transporters like little helpers standing at the door. Even when the lock is rusty, these helpers can reach out and grab the glucose and pull it inside. But as we age, and especially when insulin resistance develops, we lose these helpers. The door is rusty, and there's nobody there to help pull the glucose through. This is why blood sugar management becomes such a battle for so many seniors. You're fighting on two fronts, rusty locks and missing helpers. But what if there was something that could address both of these problems? What if there was a natural compound that could, number one, make your cells more sensitive to insulin again, essentially oiling those rusty locks, and number two, actually increase the number of glucose transporters on your cells, essentially hiring more helpers? That's exactly what this spice does. And I'm finally going to tell you what it is. The spice is cinnamon. But wait, before you roll your eyes and click away, thinking you've heard this before, I need you to understand that there's a very specific way to use cinnamon for blood sugar management, and most people get it completely wrong. Let me share what the research actually shows. A comprehensive meta-analysis published in the Journal of Medicinal Food examined 10 randomized controlled trials involving over 500 participants with type 2 diabetes. The researchers found that cinnamon supplementation significantly reduced fasting blood glucose levels by an average of 24.5 milligrams per deciliter. That's substantial. That's the difference between a concerning number and a normal one for many people. Another study published in Diabetes Care, one of the most prestigious journals in the field, found that taking cinnamon for 40 days reduced fasting blood glucose by 18 to 29% in participants with type 2 diabetes. And here's the remarkable part. The benefits continued for 20 days after participants stopped taking the cinnamon. This suggests that cinnamon isn't just temporarily masking the problem, it's actually creating lasting changes in how your body handles glucose. But how? How can a simple spice do what expensive medications struggle to achieve? The answer lies in a compound called methyl hydroxychalcone polymer, or MHCP. This compound mimics insulin at the cellular level. It essentially helps that rusty lock open more smoothly. But that's not all. Cinnamon also contains polyphenols that increase the expression of GLUT4, which is the main glucose transporter in muscle and fat tissue. Remember those helpers I mentioned? Cinnamon actually signals your body to produce more of them. More helpers means more glucose getting pulled into your cells, even when insulin isn't working at full capacity. Additionally, cinnamon has been shown to slow the rate at which your stomach empties after a meal. Why does this matter? Because when food leaves your stomach more slowly, the glucose from that food enters your bloodstream more gradually. Instead of a sharp spike that overwhelms your cells, you get a gentle wave that your body can actually handle. This is why I get frustrated when I hear people say cinnamon doesn't work for blood sugar. It absolutely can work, but only if you understand the nuances. And there are several critical nuances that most people miss entirely. Now let me tell you the rest of Margaret's story, and then I'll share what happened with 2 other patients who tried this approach. After our conversation about spices, I recommended that Margaret add Ceylon cinnamon to her daily routine. I was very specific about this, not just any cinnamon from the grocery store. Ceylon cinnamon. I'll explain why that distinction is absolutely critical in a moment. Margaret was skeptical, and honestly, I respected that. She'd been burned before by health fads and miracle cures, but she agreed to try it for 60 days while continuing her regular medication and monitoring. 3 weeks in, Margaret called my office. She said, "Dr. Moore, I think something's wrong with my glucose meter." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "My fasting numbers this morning were 118. That's lower than they've been in 2 years. It must be broken." It wasn't broken. We confirmed it with a lab test. Margaret's fasting glucose had dropped from 140 to 120 in just 3 weeks. By the end of the 60 days, she was consistently in the 110 to 115 range. Her A1C, which we tested at the end of the trial period, had dropped from 7.2 to 6.6. I remember the look on her face when I showed her those numbers. She had tears in her eyes. She said, "Dr. Moore, why didn't anyone tell me about this before? Why did I have to wait until I was 71 years old to learn about something this simple?" That question haunts me. Because Margaret isn't unusual. There are millions of seniors out there struggling with the same battle, taking multiple medications, watching everything they eat, still seeing their numbers climb year after year. And this tool, this simple, affordable, accessible tool, isn't even on their radar. But I want to be clear about something very important. Margaret's results were not magic. She didn't stop taking her metformin. She didn't abandon her healthy eating habits. She didn't stop walking. The cinnamon was an addition to her existing routine, not a replacement. And that's a crucial distinction. Let me tell you about Robert. Robert was 68, a retired mechanic who loved working in his garden. He came to me because his doctor had recently increased his medication dosage and he was experiencing side effects: stomach upset, occasional dizziness. He wanted to know if there were any natural approaches that might help him eventually reduce his medication. I told him about cinnamon, gave him the same guidance I gave Margaret, but I also told him something important, something I tell all my patients. I said, "Robert, you need to be patient. This isn't going to work overnight for everyone. Some people see results in 2 weeks. For others, it takes 6 to 8 weeks. And for some people, the effect is more modest, but the research suggests it's worth trying." Robert started his cinnamon protocol in early spring. For the first month, he didn't see much change. His numbers fluctuated a bit, maybe slightly lower, but nothing dramatic. He almost gave up. But around week 6, something shifted. His fasting glucose, which had been hovering around 150, started dropping. 145, then 138, then 131. By week 10, he was consistently in the 120s. More importantly, Robert told me he had more energy. He said he didn't feel that afternoon crash anymore, that heavy fatigue that would hit him around 2 o'clock every day. He said his joints felt better. Now, I can't scientifically attribute that to cinnamon, but the anti-inflammatory properties are well documented, so it's certainly possible. Robert's doctor was impressed enough with his progress that they were able to reduce his medication dosage by half. Not eliminate it entirely, but reduce it significantly. And those side effects he was experiencing, gone. Now let me tell you about Dorothy, because Dorothy's story illustrates an important point. Dorothy was 74 and had been pre-diabetic for about 5 years. Her A1C had been hovering right around 6.0 for as long as she could remember. Not quite diabetic, but not normal either. She was terrified of crossing that threshold into full diabetes. Dorothy tried the cinnamon approach, but here's the thing. She didn't follow the guidance exactly. She bought regular cinnamon from the grocery store because it was cheaper, and she only took it sporadically, forgetting some days, doubling up on others to compensate. After 2 months, Dorothy saw minimal improvement. Her numbers dropped slightly, maybe 5 points on average, but nothing like what Margaret and Robert experienced. I sat down with Dorothy and we talked about what might be different. And when she told me about the type of cinnamon she was using and her inconsistent schedule, I understood immediately. Here's something critical that I need you to understand, because this is where most people go wrong. There are 2 main types of cinnamon: cassia cinnamon, which is what you typically find in grocery stores, and Ceylon cinnamon, which is sometimes called true cinnamon. They look similar, they smell similar, but they are not the same when it comes to blood sugar management and long-term safety. Cassia cinnamon contains high levels of a compound called coumarin. In small amounts, coumarin isn't a problem, but if you're taking cinnamon daily for blood sugar management, those coumarin levels can add up. High coumarin intake has been linked to liver stress, especially in people who already have compromised liver function, which is common in people with diabetes. Ceylon cinnamon, on the other hand, contains negligible amounts of coumarin. We're talking about 250 times less coumarin than cassia. This makes it safe for daily, long-term use. I told Dorothy about this distinction and helped her source proper Ceylon cinnamon. I also emphasized the importance of consistency, taking it at the same time every day, not skipping doses, not doubling up. Dorothy started over with the correct approach. 6 weeks later, she called me crying happy tears. Her fasting glucose had dropped from 112 to 98. For the first time in 5 years, she was in the normal range. These stories, Margaret, Robert, Dorothy, they're not unique. I've seen similar results in dozens of patients over the years. Not everyone responds the same way, and I want to be honest about that. Some people see dramatic improvements, others see moderate benefits, and a small percentage don't seem to respond much at all. But given how safe Ceylon cinnamon is when used correctly, and given how affordable and accessible it is, I believe it's worth trying for almost anyone struggling with elevated blood sugar. Before I give you the specific protocol, I want to ask you another question. Have you ever heard about Ceylon cinnamon before this video? If this is new information to you, type news to me in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious how many people have been missing this information entirely. All right, let's get into the practical details, because knowing that cinnamon can help isn't useful unless you know exactly how to use it. Step 1. Source Ceylon cinnamon specifically. Look for packaging that says Ceylon or true cinnamon. If it just says cinnamon without specifying the type, it's almost certainly cassia. You can find Ceylon cinnamon at health food stores, online, or in the spice section of some larger grocery stores. It costs a bit more than regular cinnamon, but we're talking about maybe $8 to $12 for a supply that will last you weeks. Step 2. Start with the right dosage. The research suggests that 1 to 6 grams per day is the effective range. That's roughly 1/4 teaspoon to 1 1/4 teaspoons. I typically recommend starting at the lower end, around 1 gram or 1/4 teaspoon, and gradually increasing over 2 weeks. This allows you to see how your body responds and minimize any potential digestive adjustment. Step 3. Timing matters. Take your cinnamon with food, ideally with your largest meal of the day, or divided between 2 meals. Taking cinnamon with food helps maximize its effect on post-meal blood sugar spikes and reduces any chance of stomach irritation. Step 4. Be consistent. Take it every single day at approximately the same time. Don't skip days and don't double up if you forget a dose. Consistency is key for seeing results. Step 5. Track your numbers. Monitor your fasting glucose regularly, ideally every morning before eating. Keep a log. Write down not just the numbers, but also what you ate the day before, how well you slept, and how you're feeling overall. This will help you see patterns and understand how your body is responding. Step 6. Give it time. Expect to see initial changes within 2 to 4 weeks, but significant improvements often take 6 to 8 weeks or longer. Don't give up after 2 weeks if you don't see dramatic results immediately. Step 7. Talk to your doctor. And I cannot emphasize this enough. Do not stop taking any prescribed medications without your doctor's approval. Cinnamon should be used as a complement to your existing treatment, not as a replacement. Show your doctor this video if you need to. Share your tracking log with them. Work together to see if cinnamon supplementation might allow for eventual medication adjustments. Now, a few additional tips that I've learned from working with patients over the years. Some people find that cinnamon capsules are easier to take consistently than loose powder. That's fine, but make sure the capsules contain Ceylon cinnamon and check the dosage. Many capsules contain 500 milligrams, so you take 2 to 4 per day depending on your target dose. If you prefer using the powder, you can add it to smoothies, oatmeal, coffee, or tea. Some of my patients make a cinnamon tea by steeping a 1/4 teaspoon in hot water for 10 minutes. It's actually quite pleasant. If you experience any digestive discomfort when starting cinnamon, reduce the dose and increase more gradually. Most people tolerate it very well, but everyone's system is different. And finally, watch for signs that it's working beyond just your glucose numbers. Many patients report improved energy, better sleep, and reduced cravings for sweets. These are all positive indicators that the cinnamon is affecting your metabolism. Before I wrap up, I want to address something that's probably on your mind. You might be wondering, if cinnamon is so effective, why isn't every doctor recommending it? Why isn't this common knowledge? I've thought about this a lot, and I think there are a few reasons. First, there's no money in cinnamon. Pharmaceutical companies can't patent a spice. There's no profit motive to fund large-scale trials or marketing campaigns. The studies that exist have largely been done by academic researchers with limited budgets. Second, the medical system is conservative by nature. Doctors are trained to rely on treatments that have gone through rigorous approval processes. And while the research on cinnamon is compelling, it hasn't reached the level of evidence that would cause medical guidelines to change. Third, and I say this with love for my profession, many doctors simply don't have time to stay current on nutritional research. They're managing heavy patient loads, dealing with insurance paperwork, trying to keep up with pharmaceutical developments. Natural interventions often fall through the cracks. But this is changing. More and more healthcare providers are embracing integrative approaches that combine conventional medicine with evidence-based natural interventions. And I believe cinnamon is one of those interventions that deserves serious attention. Let me sum up what we've covered today. High blood sugar in seniors is driven by age-related insulin resistance and loss of glucose transporters. Traditional approaches focus primarily on medication and dietary restriction, but Ceylon cinnamon offers an evidence-based, safe, affordable addition to your blood sugar management toolkit. The research shows it can reduce fasting blood sugar by up to 29% in some individuals. It works by improving insulin sensitivity, increasing glucose transporters, and slowing stomach emptying to prevent blood sugar spikes. To use it effectively, you must use Ceylon cinnamon specifically, not cassia. Start with 1 gram per day and gradually increase. Take it consistently with meals. Track your numbers carefully, and always work with your healthcare provider. Margaret, Robert, and Dorothy all found success with this approach. Your results may vary, but the potential benefit, combined with the minimal risk when used correctly, makes this worth trying for almost anyone struggling with elevated blood sugar. Now, I have one final request. If this video has been helpful to you, if you've learned something new, I want you to do 2 things. First, hit that subscribe button and click the bell so you don't miss my future videos on blood sugar management and healthy aging. I publish new content every week, and next week I'll be talking about the 3 worst breakfast foods for blood sugar that most seniors eat every single day. Second, and this is important, share this video with someone you love who's struggling with blood sugar. Send it to your spouse, your sibling, your friend from church who's always complaining about their numbers. This information could change their life, just like it changed Margaret's. Remember, your health is your most valuable asset, and sometimes the most powerful tools for protecting it aren't the most expensive or complicated ones. Sometimes they're sitting right there in your kitchen cabinet, waiting for you to discover them. One quick disclaimer before I go: I am a medical doctor sharing educational information based on published research and clinical experience, but this video is not personal medical advice. Every person is different, and you should always consult with your own healthcare provider before starting any new supplement, including cinnamon, especially if you're taking medications or have underlying health conditions. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Dr. Evelyn Moore, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other.